Welcome to Growing Bremerton Together with Mayor Patty Lent. My two guests today are council members, the President of Council, Eric Younger, District 7, and Pat Sullivan, District 1. I think you'll enjoy hearing about their trip with me to Kure, Japan. Stay with us. Welcome to Growing Bremerton Together with Mayor Patty Lent. My guests today are two council members, Eric Younger from District 7 and Pat Sullivan from District 1. Eric is also our current President of Council, and we just returned a couple months ago from the city of Kure, our sister city for 49 years. We want to know, Eric and Pat, how you felt about this experience. Was it your first time to Japan? And a little bit about how you first felt when you landed.
Okay. Who would you like to go first?
You first, Eric. Being
Okay.
the tallest member of our delegation.
Thank you, Mayor Lent. First of all, I had never been to Japan before. And I thoroughly enjoyed the trip. It was an excellent trip. When I first got there, of course, we had quite a bit of jet lag. I tried sleeping on the plane. I think we left at night.
We did.
And I couldn't sleep that well in coach. It was better than American flight, but still was a little tough to sleep, so I was a little groggy. Yeah.
So being groggy, there were 13 of us that went, and we had another person from the city, Kathleen Cahill, and that's because she had an exchange student before, and Eric, you had an exchange student. Tell us a little bit about that experience when one of the Japanese young men stayed at your house.
Yes, so our exchange student was a young man named Genshi Toyota. And he came to our house about the summer, I think, of 2013. He spent a month with us, 4 weeks, and it was a great experience. I highly recommend it. Anybody that's interested in doing so, you'll get so much out of it. We had the luxury, if you will. My wife does not work, and I also have a 12-year-old, and at the time he was a 9-year-old boy, and Genshi, I think, is at the time 16 or 17, 16. Mm-hmm. And they really hit it off together because Andy's only child.
Well, Andy also, when he was younger and up until 11, was into Pokemon, and he had national records. So that must have been an excitement for both of them.
Yeah, so Andy likes to say he's retired, so I got to respect that. He's done. But he ended up on top. He was the U.S. national champion in 2014. So when Genshi was here, Andy was just getting into that season. But Genshi found it pretty exciting that Andy was into Pokemon because, of course, Pokemon originated in Japan.
It did.
And it's huge there. Yeah.
And we're about 2 or 3 months behind as far as the latest that comes out. Okay. So I believe that one of his gifts is that he did bring something or send something as a thank you.
Yeah, I'm surprised you know that, Mary. So they're one rotation, one card rotation. They come out with new cards every 3 months. Mm-hmm. So they have the cards in Japan first, and they try them out, and then they come to the United States about 3 months later. So Genshi knew ahead of time through communication with my wife via Facebook that Andy was into Pokemon, and so the Japanese, I found with my experience with Genshi and on this trip, it's custom to provide gifts, and their generosity is really incredible.
This is the culture that is so exciting about having an exchange student for that short time of a month. It's not too long where you feel the obligation or that it's a chore to have an extra student in your family. But I do understand some of the exciting things. Talking about gifts, all of us took a suitcase extra that was full of gifts because the culture of Japan and any of the Asian countries is to present a gift every time that you meet or are hosted by any individual. So Pat, you and I shared a room, and we had each other to rely on if one forgot something. What was your first impression of landing in Japan?
Busy. The Japanese language at the airport, it was a little overwhelming, but wonderful. Kimmy was a wonderful guide and got us through where we needed to go easily. But I felt if I had been there by myself, I totally would have been lost.
I think that's the
Very
wonderful
busy.
thing about having someone with us that speaks Japanese. And Kimmy Ham has been part of the program from the day that it first started. One thing that I had never been to Kure. I've been to Japan a few times, but this was a new experience for me. And they assigned each of us our own or an interpreter for maybe two of us. So as we were being toured around, and you'll see pictures of some of the different places that we landed, we had someone that would interpret, would be able to translate the things that were going on. And we had lots of festivals. So as we started, the busyness, the first thing was, of course, arriving at City Hall. And it wasn't just the mayor shaking hands with each one of us as we got off of the bus, but they had everyone. And how many people sit on their council?
32.
And how many women?
3.
3. 32. The size of their city is 240,000 people, a little bit larger than us. And they just completed a brand new city hall. So when we went to the city hall to take a tour, their mayor, Mayor Yamamoto, actually shook hands with each of us, and we'll see on the screen every one of their 32 council members, well, I should say maybe 29 because no women were there, had a welcome sign. I was impressed. I thought that was the biggest impression that I had, was that everyone turned out to welcome us. Now you remember when we had a delegation of 49 Japanese. It was just before you were on the council, but that's one of the reasons, Pat, I think you wanted to go, is when your husband Mike was on council, the delegation came here. And that was your first experience to kind of be around. We didn't necessarily tour with them because the Bremerton Central Lions Club does all of the groundwork. But they did come to a city council meeting. They did have a reception at City Hall. And again, Eric, you are the tallest person of the Japanese and of any delegation that we do. How tall are you?
I'm 6'4". Yeah.
6'4". And I just say that for clarification. You'll recognize him in all of our photos that we're
yeah.
seeing.
Yes, you will.
So the dinners, you both kind of mastered using chopsticks.
Pat was much better than me. They were chuckling a little, and I think they had the chopsticks out. They also had a fork, and I think they were given a heads up that watch this Eric, he's not that good. So, but I didn't use the fork for the whole trip.
Yep.
The whole trip.
I think that's exciting. Also, you had a taste of sake.
Oh, I had a lot of sake. Yeah.
We were talking about, well, we don't know what sake's like. So the meals were exceptional.
Very.
We had breakfast each morning with our delegation. We stayed in all in the same hotel so that we could have breakfast together. And then up until the time that Pat and I left to go to Yokosuka, we were all together and doing everything in Kure. We went out to the bridges. We went through the island that we went to. And how did you feel when you were walking among such an ancient culture? I mean, that was built thousands of years ago. And all of the different items on the island where the deer were. So they'll see a picture on the screen about you either talking to a deer or trying to pet one.
Oh, I don't recall that.
On the island? Well, the picture will show.
All right.
So it was not just your typical touring where you would go and look at museums. Although we did go to the Yamato. It was a brand new museum named after a famous battleship that at the end of World War II, they had just completed that ship. And the United States, in their war efforts, sank that ship before it ever got to be used. And they have reconstructed it. There is a model within the museum, and then all the photographs that go throughout. From the very beginning of Kure, when the city started, it wasn't just during the war years, but it had all the things that led up to our current day. So we did get a lot of culture. Mm-hmm. How did you like the food, Pat?
It was quite different. I tried a little bit of everything that came out in front of me. Tried squid and octopus for the first time, very chewy. In Yokosuka, I actually tried raw chicken, and it was wonderful. When we cook it, we cook a lot of flavor out. The raw chicken there was just wonderful. I could have just kept eating it. It's kind of like the tuna.
They have a way of preparing their foods. You have you brought something that they handed out all the time. So what is your prop that you're holding?
Oh, I thought you might ask me if what were some of my favorite impressions of both Kure and Yokosuka, and the cleanliness everywhere, no matter where you went to eat, no matter if it was like a little hole in the wall, like some of our teriyaki places, or whether you were dining in the hotel or out in a fancy restaurant, they give you a hand wipe so you can wash your hands at every single meal. It was a very, very clean atmosphere, and that was awesome. Along with that was when in the hotels, the lounges, if you sat down for a glass of wine or you ate, they had the baskets that our purses would sit in instead of on the floor.
That's right. They were very, very, very accommodating for women.
They really didn't like our purses on the floor. I remember them walking up and taking them off the floor and putting them in a basket because they're very, very clean people.
That's true. We attended more than one tea service, and we actually got to prepare the tea. Being as tall as you are, Eric, I know when Tom was with us, he was given a little stool so that he didn't have to sit cross-legged or on the floor. But you didn't seem to mind anything that they asked you to do in any of our restaurants or any of the different meals that we had.
No, I was all good. So you asked Pat about the food experience. I tried everything. Luckily, there was plenty of sake and Japanese beer to go with it. Before we get any farther, I would also like to mention that the city of Bremerton did not pay for any of this trip.
Oh, and thank you. That's good clarification. Sure. The Sister City program that began, like I say, 49 years ago. Well, actually, 50 will be in 2019. So, the Bremerton Central Lions and the Kure Lions Clubs, and there are 8 of them in Kure, were at an in Florida, international convention. And they got to talking, 2 of the presidents, about their own cities. We have a shipyard, they have a shipyard. We have a naval base, they're close to a naval base. There were so many things that were commonalities that the clubs were doing. They said we should form a sister city. And that's how this all came about. When our exchange students from Bremerton travel over at the same time that we receive 8 students, the Bremerton Central Lions pays for half of their fare. This trip was something that we all talked about, and each individual paid their own way. However, there were lots of things sponsored. Most of our meals were sponsored, all the transportation. The things that we paid in advance were just so we could have the experience of our Sister City program. Also entice them for more people to come and visit our city. And all of us did pay independently. Thank you.
Sure.
People are always asking, well, what did that cost the taxpayer? You should be very pleased that all of us sitting here, in fact, all the people on council, are fiscally responsible for everything that's done on your behalf and the services. Thank you for bringing that up. So now back to the food.
Getting back to the food. So I thought going in, okay, yeah, I'm not that experienced with chopsticks. However, I do love chicken teriyaki. Well, guess what? As far as I know, there is no chicken teriyaki in Japan.
That isn't a Jap. It's like French fries didn't come from France, and pizza didn't come from Italy.
So then I got the chopsticks that I practiced a little at home, but probably should have practiced some more. And then some really interesting food. And of course, I was raised correctly. I ate everything that was put in front of me. And there was plenty of food, and there's plenty of variety. And so as Pat mentioned, there was some interesting food like snail and squid and calamari, which I had before. It was all extremely fresh and very good. I could tell it's high quality, but it's not normally in my palate. So, but I ate it. It was good. And I could tell, you know what? The food is healthier there. You could eat a lot, but not feel super stuffed like you do here in America.
I don't think they use the salt. I don't think they use the grease or the condiments that we sometimes, in preparation for our food. There are McDonald's everywhere. So, but you never had a chance to go into one, and you wanted to try and see what the difference was.
I wanted to see the difference, and so you guys went off your different way on the trip, and we can talk about that later. I spent 2 days in Tokyo, and I did quite a bit of walking on my own, but I did not step foot in. I'm proud of it. I didn't try McDonald's.
Any American food?
So the last 2 days we were in an American hotel, and I was fortunate enough I traveled a bit for work. So I was in the gold class at the Hilton on the executive floor, and all the food was free. My point is, I didn't spend 1 yen on anything meal-wise while I was there, mostly because our guests in Kure were just outstanding, the service they gave us and all the food.
At the Lions dinner, and each one of the 8 different Lions clubs in Kure were at this dinner. It was a large dinner. They didn't have their spouses with them, but they gave us each chopsticks to bring back. So that, again, for you to try, so that when you go to a Japanese restaurant, you need to ask for chopsticks now.
Yeah.
You were able to do some shopping, and there are lots of shopping malls right across from the hotel and throughout. I know when the Japanese come here, they love shopping. They have at least 1 or 2 days where they just plan to shop. Did you buy some tennis shoes?
I did,
Yes.
but they weren't Japanese tennis shoes. They were Skechers, but they were
Skechers.
so light and
They were
comfortable.
probably made in Japan, though.
I didn't check that, but they were so light and comfortable, I just couldn't resist.
They had lots of shopping. When our students come here, their students come here, one store that is not in Japan anywhere is American Eagle. So they all want to take and get something that has a logo or a symbol that they can't buy in Japan.
Yeah, I can relate to that. So Genshi, very distinguished young man, very well dressed, and he liked Hollister clothes.
Hollister.
I mean, I don't know. Andy knows this stuff, but I don't. We just took him to the mall, and for some reason, you can't get those clothes in Japan, or they're extremely expensive compared to what they're here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When we were sightseeing and having an interpreter, it takes a little bit longer for something to be described. You'll hear it in Japanese, and then it'll be translated. You gave a speech to the council.
Yes, I did.
And you gave it in Japanese. So tell us how
Yes.
you learned your Japanese before going.
Well, it was really kind of a fortunate circumstance in that where I work in my other job in Seattle, we had just recently hired a new secretary who's originally from Tokyo.
Mm-hmm.
And then she came out here 20-some years ago, went to college and never went back. So I just happened to ask, you wouldn't by happen chance, do you speak Japanese? Oh yeah, I'm from Tokyo. I was like, okay. So I found or actually my wife found a poem about friendship, and it didn't translate very well, so I switched the words around, and I had her translate it for me. And then I actually went online and found this translator tell me how to say words and whatnot. And then later on, I ran it by Lon, who was on our group, and said, "Does this sound right?" No. So, long story short, by the time I got to the speech, I felt comfortable in saying it was about 10 lines, but apparently I did okay.
You did okay. They always appreciate when you try to do something, again, within their own language or within their culture. The helmet that's sitting beside Pat was a gift to the city from Kure. And not only that, but as president of council, from their president and me from the mayor, we each got a hand-blown bell.
Yes.
So some of the gifts that we brought back, Pat described some of the things that you received, from sugar cubes.
Sugar cubes from the one of the tea ceremonies, along with some green tea. You make it a very rich, thick green tea. Excellent. And then some of the gifts that were given to me were some like table banners or window shades that you would put in your window. There was also, Kure is known for their brushes, And so there were
Cosmetic
makeup brushes,
brushes.
cosmetic brushes, and fingernail file, or files of all kinds, but a fingernail file. So those were some of the gifts that were presented to me while attending the functions.
From frames to pictures and photographs. They take
love
more
photographs.
photographs than any of us. And some of the photos that will be shown as we are discussing Kure are all from that, because we got a complete disc that must have more than 300 photographs. So it'll take some editing. The train and the bus was high class. It was first class, very comfortable. They had food carts that went through. We were never hungry. As you said, you didn't have to really spend any money because things were provided for us by our hosts. And again, it was only the length of time. The day that we came home, it was about 4 hours on the train. And then we had some time in Tokyo where we met up with you, Eric. And then we had a 9.5 hour flight. Yeah, it takes a long time to get there, but we're still excited today from the experiences that we had in that short 2-week period.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. If you were to go back, would you recommend one specific thing to a guest?
Well, since I've been to Southwest Japan, Kure, and I've been to Kyoto, which is originally the capital of Japan and the historic city, and I've been to Tokyo, I thought if I go again, I'd like to go to Sapporo, which is in the northern part of Japan, and they have weather more like I'm accustomed to. I'm originally from Minnesota, and it's also where they make the beer.
And it's also where we held the Olympics at one time.
There you go. Yeah, so I'd like to see that. It'd be a different climate, because in Kure, if people don't know, it's humid.
It is humid.
And it was even a little bit humid there on some days, but other days it was really delightful. But you could feel the humidity. You could tell in the summertime it gets humid. Yeah.
And it's curious to see the Japanese men are still dressed in suits. When
They all
they
wear
go to
suits.
work, they seem to feel that the persona of their job is to be dressed in a suit and tie.
Yeah.
So where we might be in an open jacket, right? Even at the parade, though, they had a suit and tie. They took the jacket off because it got warm. One of the festivals that we were able to see, and the reason that they wanted us to go at the specific time that we went is their festival was similar to our Armed Forces Day festival. It happens every year. It's well attended. Just lots of people turn out, and they gave us front row seats for us to take and witness that. One thing that I want to ask you about as well is they just built their new courthouse, I should say City Hall. It is probably 2 or 3 blocks in size. And what they've done, and you can probably describe better than I, is they have, in case there is a tsunami or an earthquake, this facility can accommodate nearly the entire population of Kure. They have one room that is a theater, and they have like bleacher seats. The seats all fold up, the floor all comes up to one level, and I was amazed to see the technology that went into the construction of that building.
Yeah, very high tech. And they have a huge command center, screens all over the place for all the emergency personnel to meet and figure out what to do in case of an emergency. Yeah.
They not only gave us the tours, but they gave us a lengthy, in case we were going through an exercise of emergency management, they actually went through that exercise with us. It was amazing. When the people were around for that parade, you could barely walk shoulder to shoulder because there were so many, and they were all trying to get in to see this new City Hall as well. So the crowds were enormous for us to see. Describe a little bit, because they're going to see you standing behind the podium of their chambers where they have their meetings. And again, the technology was even better than what we have in ours.
Oh yeah, the technology is pretty high end, which you'd expect in Japan, obviously. But maybe Pat, you can help me out. It was their voting system. Before it used to be you raised your hand and they count the votes.
Yep.
But now it was a simple yes or no on a button, and then it would, well, you go ahead.
Before you ever got there, when you sat down, because they had to know who all was in attendance, rather than taking like a roll call, they had this bar that they stood either pushed forward and that indicated that you were there at present. And they had a monitoring screen that checked off all the seats that were there so they would know how many people were there to vote. And then when those that weren't there, of course it stayed down and therefore their seats were vacant. And then they had the yes, no on, on any item that they wanted to vote for.
And they had these big screen TVs, and of course it's televised, so the public can watch on their TV how things are going, and it's pretty impressive. And then the president and the vice president sat up high.
Like a judge.
Like a judge over the rest of the council. Kind of like that. But I was just kidding.
Yeah, he liked that one.
So yeah, you'll see in the pictures.
Yes.
I'm up there with a big grin on my face
You
because
are.
he lets me sit up there on the seat, and
That's great.
Pat was next to me.
I wanted to stand because I'm so short, and the seat next to him is even shorter. So they wanted me to sit, and I'm like, but I'm already short.
They had a small gallery for their public, but like you say, it was televised. So it was televised throughout their building, on their main entry, as well as throughout, like ours is televised.
Yep.
So learning about their government was interesting. Then during this parade, they started with, or we had a chance to see a little bit of a performance on stage. The young children that start at 3 or 4 years old, learning either an instrument or to play the drums or to do a dance, their culture begins at infancy. And it's amazing. We kind of wait until our children are at a stage where we know if they like something or if they have a skill towards something. There, it's just kind of an automatic thing that these young people, and at that dinner that we had with the Lions, there were, and we'll see this performance on the screen, they actually had 4, 5, and 6-year-olds. They came out and they took a stand. And we are in and talked about in 3 different newspapers. So it gave us a chance, or it gave them a chance to know about our delegation, where we were from, how many were there, and what we were there to see. So again, we left an impression. We also, lots of people were able to see that we had the interest long enough for us to take and participate in what they do. We're looking forward to 2019. It's the 50th anniversary. We don't know if there's another group going back or if they're going to have a delegation coming here. So it's something that allows our citizens here in Bremerton. We have some Japanese and we have some Laotian and some different type of restaurants that serve for us, but it's really different being on the soil and the land of a different country and that culture. I know you'll be talking about this for a long time. They'll be able, and you'll be able to see all the different photographs that you can relive this experience. I want to thank you for being my guest. It's always fun having our own council involved in things that are keeping us in the newspaper and in the eye of all of our residents and citizens. Thank you for joining us this time on Growing Bremerton Together with Mayor Patty Lent. I'll see you next time.
Thank you.